open. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Apologies from Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, and George Evans is here as a substitute, and Councillor Beth Rowland is joining on Teams, Chair.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's look at the minutes of the last meeting. Has anyone got any comments? Page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. Can we have a show of hands from people who were actually here, which doesn't include me? Like unanimous? Okay, are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest? Okay, are there any questions?
No public questions and no member questions, Chair.
Fantastic. Right, come on to item 62, the overview of the council plan. This is overview, this is the second overview of this council plan rather than scrutiny, which we'll come to later on. So over to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm just going to say a very few words of introduction, and then I'm going to hand over to Louise and to Emily to present to you on the council plan. But essentially, the council plan is influenced by a number of other plans and other pieces of work. And perhaps the most important influence on it has been the community vision work with our partners in the wider community, which has provided us with a very clear sense of the priorities that our partners in the community have and would like to see delivered in the coming years by the borough, through the borough, not just by the council, but by all other key players in the borough. And the council plan is, at least in part, our effort to demonstrate that we are responding to that and demonstrating how we hope to be able to carry forward those aspirations in the community vision. But it's influenced by many other things as well. You will be aware that we're engaging very actively with the Marmot principles about public health and well-being. These have been an influence on this council plan, and we are also we've also got a people strategy for the first time, which is really about our workforce, and that also has exerted an influence here. So this is an attempt to pull together a lot of very good work and establish an integrated framework for seeing it all together. I think that's probably all I need to say at this stage before handing over to Louise and to Emily.
Thank you very much, Leader. So yes, thank you. As I say, we're here. I think we came last on the 9th of September, where we first sort of showed you what we were doing with regarding the development of the new council plan. We had a number of points that were raised by yourselves in that meeting, which we've tried to consider and include as we've taken it on to the next part of its journey. Emily's got some slides that she's just going to walk you through with regard to what we've been doing since September and where we are at in the journey at this point in time, and then the forward look with regard to final sign off, but working towards July. So if I hand over to Emily to walk us through.
Thank you. Is that picking me up? Yeah. So yes, as Louise said, this is for overview, and there are a couple of outcomes that we would like to get from this meeting. First of all, we would like to ensure that committee members are updated on the development of the new council plan, that members have the opportunity to feed into the new plan and can have their voice heard in that, and that members are aware of the formal consultation that actually began yesterday, and that is live through to the 3rd of March. So first of all, I just wanted to give you an overview of what we've been doing since we came in September. As Louise said, we did take on board some of the feedback from the meeting with you, and that includes some of the wording around some of the themes we were talking about, and also how we're considering the delivery of the council plan and how we're going to measure those activities as well and monitor them. We spent a large part of the autumn going out and meeting residents and talking to them in town centres and libraries, and just really asking them what they thought was the most important thing that the council should be doing, what are the things that matter to them, and just really trying to get an understanding of what residents want. At the same time, talking to partners and staff as well. So we've been doing lots of engagement with staff as well. We had a workshop just before Christmas with the corporate leadership team, where we started to bring some of those ideas together and think about sort of prioritisation. And then we had a further session with CLT and the executive members, where we looked at that in even greater detail. From that, we then created the current draft, which has, as I said, just gone out for consultation yesterday. This is just a summary of all of the engagement we've done so far. So we've had, it's probably getting closer to 600 interactions now since this slide was created, but we've been speaking, gone quite broad and wide, and spoken to a whole range of different groups of people, just to really get the widest view on what matters to people, so that we're not just kind of creating something from within, where we're listening to what people actually want and need. This slide just gives you a bit of a snapshot of some of the things that residents were saying, and we've ranked some of the most important things. So they include maintaining public and open spaces. People have said that's both most important and the thing that we should focus on the most. Feeling safe is really important, and having vibrant local centres. Affordable homes has come up on both categories as well. So we've really tried to take that on board when we've been developing what is now, it's not the final plan, it's still a draft, but what we've got currently. But looking at that alongside some of those initiatives and other plans that Stephen talked about, such as the community's vision, the Marmot Borough work, Social Care Future, for example, a helping early strategy with children's services. So we've tried to pull all of those things together to create what we have now. One of the first things we did was to draft an overall mission statement for the council, just setting out what we hope is the purpose of the organisation very broadly. We've done a fair bit of discussion on this and engaged with staff, and on the whole, I think most people feel that that's a suitable vision for the council. We're really about giving people the opportunity to thrive, and that's really our overarching aim. Within that, we did talk last time about some themes. We had 5 themes originally, and one of those was thriving, and the feedback that we had from our engagement suggested that fair and thriving were actually quite similar. And when we took a step back and looked at it, we found that we kind of thought that the 4 themes we have now actually contribute overall to a thriving borough. So we've kind of pared it down to 4 themes, but we feel that those things collectively actually contribute to a thriving borough. I'll go through these reasonably quickly, but we can come back to different priorities and these slides as we go if you have questions. The first theme we have is fair. And it's really about equitable access to opportunities and support. And we've identified 4 priorities. We've got 4 under each of the themes. The first is about people having the chance to contribute to their community through improved inclusion and our commitment to equality and diversity. The second is people in hardship are supported to improve their circumstances, including support with debt, fair employment and good jobs. Priority 3, residents across the borough have access to a range of education, skills and services and opportunities to live a healthy life. And well-being is promoted at all ages. And the 4th is that everyone can live in a place they call home. So I'll just give you a chance to, I think you've all got a printed copy as well, hopefully, or an online copy. And we can come back to these if you have particular questions about any of those. The second theme is green, so around the surroundings are being clean and sustainable, and also tackling climate change and reducing our carbon footprint. So the first priority there is everyone shares the benefits of improved biodiversity and safe, accessible green spaces. The second, people can enjoy a clean and well-maintained streets and other public areas which foster a sense of civic pride for all. Number 3, lowered emissions from transport, homes and businesses and improved recycling will help to tackle climate change, improving people's health and well-being. And the final one there is residents benefit from improved energy efficiency in their homes, making them warmer and healthier to live in and reducing bills. The third theme was safe. So everyone who lives, works and visits Woking Borough feels safe and is supported to live independently. So the priorities there are residents can expect to be protected from abuse, exploitation and neglect. Secondly, people feel safe in their communities, including those who are at greater risk of discrimination, antisocial behaviour and hate crime. Thirdly, we have supportive communities and partnerships where helping early is everyone's business. And finally, housing, streets and public areas are designed, built and maintained with people's safety at the forefront. We had quite a lot of comments around things like pavements and areas being difficult and unsafe to use and access. So that's partly where that came in. And the 4th theme is connected. It's not just about being physically connected by good transport links, but being socially connected as well and digitally connected. The priorities we identified there were we all live in communities where we feel we belong and have strong social connections. Secondly, outcomes for residents are better because we work in partnership and shape services together, including through new technology. Priority 3, we help our town centres and neighbourhoods to be thriving, accessible and welcoming, helping businesses to succeed. And the 4th one is that people can get to where they need and want to through good transport links. So as I say, we can revisit those if you have any questions. I just wanted to touch on the formal consultation. So I say that's out, it's live up until the 3rd of March, so next month. What we've shared is a sort of a branded version of the full plan, but also we've got an easy read version and just a plain text version just to make it accessible, hopefully, to everybody. And what we're asking is really to what extent people agree with the overall plan, with the mission statement, and then with the themes and priorities. So we've got the external survey and we're doing an internal survey for staff as well, asking similar but slightly different questions. So finally, just to let you know the next steps, obviously we're here today. The consultation is live. What we'll be doing throughout February, actually, as responses start to come in, we'll start to analyse that feedback, take that on board and begin to create a sort of a final draft, which will form the kind of final plan that we want to then get agreement to. But as I said, we're also thinking now about how we're going to deliver those priorities. So trying to link back now to our strategies, our action plans, our projects and programmes, and really sort of just making that link and identifying what the activity needs to be to deliver that, and developing the KPIs that will measure our progress. That's really important. And I think particularly this committee looks at our corporate performance every quarter, and so we'll be looking to how we incorporate those measures into those reports that come here as well. So we're looking to come back to this committee in May or June, depending on the times of meetings, before we go through that formal sign-off procedure. So you'll have that opportunity again to look at that plan, and then we go to sign off in July at full council. So that's the slides. I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Louise and Stephen will be happy to as well.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, I saw Adrian's hand waving first.
I must say the mission statement is quite a short statement, which is very admirable, because I remember some of the first mission statements I saw in the corporate world, which were huge, and nobody could remember anything about them. So I think the focus on Thrive is a good aim. I wanted to ask a little bit about the homes. So I think it's G4. Yeah. Improved efficiency in the homes. Can I ask about that?
I can come in on this one. This is one we have a very good chance of being able to put into practice in the not too distant future. What I didn't mention, obviously, in my introduction, which I should have done, is all of this also fits in with another plan, the local plan. And our new local plan, which we'll be submitting to inspectors' examination later this month, that new local plan includes new policies on energy efficiency in new homes and commercial buildings, which should have the effect of making them easier to heat and therefore reducing the bills of the people who live in them. So we are in a position, I think, to be able to demonstrate we can deliver this, so long as we can get it through the inspectorate examination. The only hesitation about that is the previous government issued a written ministerial statement in December 2023 telling councils that they should not look to go beyond building regulations in terms of energy efficiency measures. A lot of councils, not just ours, were already working on local plans that had bolder ambitions in it than building regulation standards. And having taken advice, we have decided to proceed with these, and we'll have to have them tested at examination. We were hopeful that written ministerial statement would be revoked, but as of yet it hasn't actually been revoked. But we are engaging with the new government to try and get their commitment to the kind of higher standards we're seeking to achieve in our local plan. This would benefit our residents enormously, as well as being clearly environmentally an extremely good thing to do. So I'm hoping this will stand the rigorous test of the inspector's examination, and we'll be allowed to keep those policies in that enable us to deliver this. And we've demonstrated in terms of viability that this is affordable. Developers can provide these high quality energy efficient homes and still make the required profit on their investments. So we, I think, have done a lot of work, and I'd like to commend the work done by particularly Una Haran in the planning team. She's devoted a lot of effort to ensuring we're in a good place with these policies, testing them against what other councils are doing, following all of the legal developments as different councils bring their plans forward for examination, seeing how they fare when they're in a similar position to us. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to deliver on this quite soon.
That's a perfect answer. Thanks, Stephen. Moving on to the KPIs, I think it's a really good idea to try and track this. If this is our mission, then we should have KPIs to follow. And I think typically the behaviour that you see in any organisation is to say, well, we've had these KPIs for 20 years, therefore we keep cranking the handle and do the same KPIs. And, you know, I did make a challenge to, I think it was Steve, with regards to recycling and, you know, potentially new contracts for household refuse collection, that because the legislation's moving, actually the KPIs have to move. And if you look at the TLIP, their legislation is moving, so their KPIs will have to move. So I'm very encouraged by you saying that there are going to be new KPIs focused on our objectives, because I think that's ultimately what we should be doing. We should be gauging ourselves against these targets, which, you know, we've all collaborated with, including the residents and lots of partner groups. So I think it's the right thing to be doing. So no question, just a very positive statement.
Caroline.
Just say thank you very much for this. On priority F4, which is all about fairness, so you've got everyone living in a place they call home. Could we have that as a safe home? Because I think it's also important that we define a home as somewhere safe, they're free from mould and all things that we now look for. So just stay somewhere in that, say, a safer home for them to live in. Thank you.
That's a very, very good point. Thank you. Yeah, obviously the aspiration is that everyone can live in a place that's safe, secure, warm, and acts as a genuine home, not just a bricks and mortar building.
You have got safety in the safe. I mean, you've got safe homes there, so I don't know whether it's sort of covered.
I think it's a fair point, Chair. What we'll do is we're looking at all of the feedback, and as we sort of start to look at, and it doesn't hurt sometimes that the things sort of talk to each other and sort of correspond. But yeah, no, we're duly noted.
Andrew.
Yeah, it's a bit of a general question. I mean, I think all the ambitions on here are sort of very positive, and I think as things that I'm sure we can mostly agree on. I was just wondering, I haven't been a councillor for a huge amount of time, so I haven't been through the iterations of previous ones. I was just wondering how, if there's any key differences in this one compared to previous council plan. Are there any sort of particular headlines on this which you think where this is maybe moving in a slightly different direction from previously, or?
I think that's a really good question, Andrew. I think what's fundamentally different about it is the role of the community vision, which is itself obviously the product of a lot of community engagement. So I think the fact that that has influenced this council plan, it's nothing like it existed before. So the council was largely drawing up its own plan, then putting it out to consultation. Well, obviously we're putting this plan out to consultation, but it's already the product of a very considerable amount of engagement through the community vision. It also, I do think, I suppose the short answer would be there's an awful lot of work gone into this one, a lot more than as far as I can see went into previous ones. Previous ones were kind of summaries of what we'd done and where we wanted to go. I think this one has involved a lot more work. It's a lot more integrated. As I was suggesting earlier on, it's bringing together a lot more component parts that will make up the plan. But fundamentally, I think it's based on that community vision, aspirations. But Emily and Louise have been leading the work on this, and they've done a phenomenal amount. It has been a really big piece of work, and I don't think we should underestimate the amount of effort that's gone in, and I'm very grateful to them. But they may want to say something about the contrast with earlier plans.
I wasn't here previously, so I think that's one point just to make. And I don't think Emily was either, but we have done this in other places.
I was.
So, but I suppose what I can say is some of the other things that we have been doing. So it's very much so evidence-led. So from the point of view of actually making sure we're looking at our data as well as our feedback, so that again, understanding our population and thinking about where we need to be going, as you say, consulting and engaging as much as we can. And as we've already said, building on what's already happening as well. I think what we're trying to produce here is there are a lot of strategies that are already in place. What we're not trying to do is have a strategy that repeats what's being said there. It's the umbrella that is sitting over everything to pull all of that up together so that we can again see in one place what the council is looking to achieve. But as I say, it's quite an iterative process that we've been going through, and I think you've started doing research in 2023. So it's not that we, this is whilst we've been on the journey with you, because we needed to make sure the community's vision had been through its process so that the council could then facilitate its part of what it needs to deliver from that. So yeah, definitely the process that we've been following. Is there anything else, Emily, that you would like to add?
I think the only other thing that I would add in terms of what's different from the previous plan is I feel that this one is much more focused on people and the outcomes for residents, even the things that are maybe place-based or to do with infrastructure or climate change. It's around the impacts that those things will have on people's lives. And I think that's quite a big shift compared to what we had before.
Got questions from Alison, Shahid, George and Dave in that order.
Oh, thank you. I noticed on page 10, the autumn engagement, what should the council focus on? And a very high, in fact, the top one is the feedback is roads, and the word roads doesn't feature. And we know our residents are very keen that we maintain and improve our roads. So could you explain how you took that feedback and put it into the priorities?
I suppose the way we've looked at it is through the connected theme and through C4, the C4 priority. People can get to where they need and want to through good transport links. Oh, yes, there is. Yeah. Do you want to just come in and?
Yeah. So we've also S4. So this under safe. We've said the housing, streets and public areas are designed, built and maintained with people's safety at the forefront. Because I think a lot of people's concern with things like, let's say, potholes is around their safety and the safety of the roads as well as their vehicles.
G2 as well.
Okay. G2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the well-maintained streets and other public areas. So we haven't got one thing that says this is all about roads. It's kind of it kind of comes up throughout the plan, and that's kind of what we've tried to do is with the themes is rather than focus on one specific service is to kind of theme it and understand that lots of different services contribute to those outcomes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think the good transport links to most of our residents implies buses and trains rather than actual roads. And am I right to think that we're replacing the vision that we have at the front of every agenda with this is our new vision of what we're setting out? Yes. Yeah, I mean, and in that one, we very, very specifically stated maintain and improve our roads, footpaths and cycleways. And I think, looking at the wording of this, it's a different way of doing it. And I like this. But I just think that since roads was highlighted and brought forward so much, perhaps it does need to be less oblique within this document.
That's great feedback. I think, again, this is why we want to come and have these sort of engagement sessions. So yeah, no, that is duly noted, and we'll have a look at that as we progress it. Thank you.
Shahid.
Thank you. Just looking at the priorities again, a couple of points I want to make. I'm just looking, there's nowhere can I see, obviously some people are concerned, adults, about the adult social care. Where does that priority fall in the feedback? Is it under services, or is it, can't see that specifically anywhere? Obviously, that is a big issue. The adult population is increasing and almost 25%. But, where do I see this in the feedback, or is it maybe hidden somewhere, which is not?
So is that in the feedback from residents? Yeah. I'll be honest, that adult social care wasn't something that was at the forefront of people's minds when we spoke to them. They seemed to be much more focused on their immediate environment and the things that are immediately around them. And most people we spoke to, and maybe we haven't been to the right places, didn't kind of raise that as a particular concern. Though we have worked closely with, for example, the team on Social Care Future and the Adult Social Care Strategy, which is why some of the priorities have come out are around adult social care or around safeguarding and supporting people. But from the residents that we spoke to, that just wasn't the top of their concerns.
Can I come? Sorry.
Yeah, to pick up on the point that Emily made previously, whilst the words may not be adult social care here, there are lots of actions and priorities that support our customers, ranging from everyone that can call their a place home, for example, is absolutely fundamental. And the council has done a huge amount in terms of that supported accommodation piece for residents that are in most need. And there are other lines in terms of support to residents when they're in most need as well. So I don't think it's lost. I think it's a similar thing, I think, to the roads issue in a way, that we're not saying adult social care, but there are many lines in here which actually contribute to that really important agenda as well.
Very quickly to that. And the other part of, when you look at the plan, there will then be very clearly what strategies are actually then in place that are supporting it. So those big strategies in adult social care, children's services will all be referenced within that particular document, because they are the things that are actually then delivering those actual priorities and what it is that we're doing. So I appreciate we're sharing with you the priority wording within this presentation. When we look at the whole document, that's going to be very clearly, all of those strategies will be referenced within there.
Just a final little point, if I may, Shahid. One of the consultees, as you noticed, was Social Care Futures, and these are users of our social care services, and they gave us a very good idea of what their priorities were. And interestingly, for many, it was getting access to public transport earlier, being able to use their passes earlier, and we have been able to respond to that. As you know, we've devoted money to increasing the hours of use of those very important bus passes for disabled people and their carers. So that's a direct response to the kind of issues raised through the consultation with users of our adult social care. I suspect that for most members of the public, we as councillors know very well that there's a great crisis in adults and children's social care. We're acutely aware of it. We're acutely aware that more than 2/3 of our budget is spending on adults and children's social care. But most of our residents, unless they are themselves directly affected by this, focus on the remaining 30 to 35% of our spending, which is on issues completely unrelated to adults and children's social care. So there's a disjuncture, if you like, between what we as councillors are aware is a really big and urgent issue, and I think what appears as the big and urgent issues to many of our residents, that they're not necessarily the same. And I can understand why. Most of these priorities obviously reflect the circumstances and perspective of individuals who think about their own locality more than perhaps the social circumstances of some of their fellow residents.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, I recognise that, but I think there's also raised a question as well. I mean, what you said is that most of the feedback, actually, this was not their concern, but that raises another question in my mind, whether, I know you adults, what is it, the name you mentioned, Stephen, adult, what is that, you consulted?
This was social care futures. And these are the users of these services and carers as well.
In my experience, I mean, people I speak to are 60 plus, this is their biggest concern. Because, and it just raises a question in my mind, whether the people were consulted, did they fall in that category? And I'm a bit surprised that nobody mentioned that, because the number of experience I had is totally different in a sense, because from their point of view, they cannot afford. Affordability is a big issue from their point of view, and especially in the southeast. And so I just came as a surprise that actually it's not there. But then also, bear in mind, in the previous vision we had, it was very clearly stated the care side, offer quality of care and support at the right time to reduce the need for long-term care. So it's very specific, and I think that's very important, that these wordings are very important. I don't want to rather make it easier for people to understand. That's the way I look at it, rather than having to dig down in the words and all the vocabulary. Oh, is it really here or is it really there? But things which are important, I think it needs to be very crystal clear what our priorities are. The simpler they are, the better they are, and better for people to understand. That's the way I look at it. I'll come back to the other issue in a minute.
I think what I just wanted to say is, and again, this is all why we're having this session. So the feedback is, let's have a look at that wording, and then let's sort of test that, because whilst we've been out and done engagement, there are more opportunities for engagement around this, and we'll be taking every opportunity to test these words and make sure that they do mean something, as you say, to people. So I think it's fair comments, and we will make sure that, again, we take it on board as we look to develop the sort of final versions in worship.
Two more points, Chair, if I may. Just regarding the KPIs, I think, Emily, you touched upon that slightly. Again, being in the council for some time, right? Again, I'm very, sometimes skeptical of the KPIs in a sense. I think what we need to focus on, I think you touched upon that, but I think it's worth re-emphasizing that it needs to be outcome-based, the results-based. What, I mean, sometimes, building a house, these are the number of building houses we've actually built, but rather than, could we look, these are the number of homeless people we actually have become given home to. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about people's lives. So if we've got maybe 5,000 homeless, I'm not saying they are, right? But how many actually we help those and they've come out, they've got a house to live in. So you can say that we have made a tangible difference in people's lives. So that every outcome, this KPI needs to be outcome based. That's very important. Actually, we look at that. Sorry, you can respond to that now.
I think just building on what Emily had said earlier, and what we were talking about is that this is it will be an opportunity for us to sort of look at our KPIs. We're very much looking for outcomes. So we've got a clear objective, and then we need to see the clear outcome that's coming from that. So I think it is just taking this opportunity to refresh and relook. To be fair, we do look at our KPIs on an annual basis anyway, and do look to refresh, to take on board what councillors are saying, and obviously ensure that we're giving you meaningful information. But again, absolutely point taken, and we will have a look at that as we move forward with obviously how we're going to deliver on that with the new council plan, because what we're looking to have here is this is the council plan and this is how we're delivering against it. So it's absolutely what needs to be outcome focused.
I just wanted to say one very small thing on the point you raised, Shahid, about the over 60s. Are their views represented here? I have to say, normally it's not a problem getting the views of the over 60s in any form of consultation. They're overwhelmingly the people who tend to respond to online consultations. Our challenge is usually getting the views of people outside that age bracket. But I guess what we've got to strike a balance here between obviously what councillors would like to see go in the council plan and a recognition that we're basing this to a large extent on the community vision and its aspirations. So we've got to be careful that we don't try and just, in trying to put it into a language that we recognise and feel comfortable with, abandon the language that the community vision developed itself, because that language is very much reflected here. So it's a delicate balancing act.
You're absolutely right, Stephen. So in a sense, as councillors, we are also part of the community as well. We engage with the community. So sort of we have a reasonable understanding of what the community, is asking for. And this is whether is it good from our point of view to critique it as well. So does it reflect what the people on the doorstep are saying? So this is my reflection was that this is what I'm hearing outside, and I don't see it very clearly. Well, it is there, but maybe not the word. But I think we touched upon that. Just the last point on the data, obviously insight, which we use to get a better understanding of the community. I mean, the definition of data is something that happened in the past. It's backward looking. But what we're seeing is Woking Borough is moving, quickly changing as well as we move along. The demographics are changing, new communities are coming in, etc. So I'm just slight concern at the back is obviously by the time we started this journey and by the time we actually implemented it, we're talking about a couple of years' time. And the goalposts may have shifted in a sense to some extent. I understand, obviously it will give us a good understanding, but I suppose the plan has to be very agile to say it reflects and we can basically adapt to the change, whatever the change might be. So I think that's where I'm coming from.
I think we'd all agree with that. It needs to be agile. The community vision itself, which is such a fundamental foundation for this, is itself going to be refreshed periodically to make sure that it still reflects what people aspire to see in the borough in the years ahead. So these are in many ways necessarily living documents that will change as things change around them.
Can I just quickly add also just around the data point? Whilst I appreciate there's old data, we will always look at renewing when we get new data so that we don't stay stagnant with something that we looked at in 2023. Yes, we might have started the approach and started to look at things, but it's very much about, as you say, constantly reviewing that because you need to understand the people that you're serving. And as you say, things are constantly moving. So I just want to sort of reassure that we are constantly reviewing and making sure we make those updates.
Okay, George.
Thank you. I think it's great that this is evolving because I think a vision and a plan needs to evolve. Just to sort of echo Shahid's point about what we've got at the front of the agenda at the moment, there's no ambiguity in what these mean, I suppose. You read it and you sort of go, okay, I understand exactly what that line is. And I suppose the challenge I have with this at the moment is, what does it mean in the background? What's the action there? If I read the road bit, tackle congestion, minimize delays and disruption, for example, you sort of get it. I don't really know how you've resolved that, but I suppose there's a there's less. I suppose this what we've got at the moment is clear on exactly what's meant. The main point I wanted to make is I think that there may be a part missing, which is a V for me, which is value. And I think in recent years, it's become very important for us to best use council tax money, sweat our built assets, whether that be, I've had a bit of thing about roundabouts recently and actually advertising on roundabouts. I've been bringing up with Mark Ashwell a little bit. But I think, number one for our residents, I think, is with the money they give us, they want to see it go to good use and get value out of it. They don't want cheap. They want value from the council. And so I wonder whether we can implement something across the 4 existing where there's a value is seen as a core element, or if you need a V. Yeah, so you were sort of looking at each other and nodding. So there's been sure.
I think I'm rather tempted to reference one thing, and that's the Empower report into councils in terms of productivity. So this is very much about whether they're providing value, and productivity was measured by outcomes achieved per pound spent, which is, I think, essentially what you're talking about, George. And we were ranked 5 in the country in terms of that measure of productivity. And that's owes a lot to the kind of partnership working that's led to the creation of the community division, that's led to what you see before you. And I think it's not rocket science. If you do work with others, you are able to secure that kind of value for money in many ways, much more than you can on your own. So I think we are very, very conscious of value for money and the importance of value for money. We are, as you know, a council that does not receive a lot of support from central government in financial terms. That's historically been the case over many years, and it's just got a little bit worse. So it's one of the spurs to make us very conscious that we've got to be very effective in all the spending we do. So that is uppermost in our minds. But obviously, again, it's important to recognise that this is based on community engagement, and that's not necessarily the language that the people out there use. They use a different language, and they have a different kind of set of priorities, and we're trying to reflect their priorities in this plan. But in the background, overarching it all, is that sense of the V word, as you put it.
You referenced that report at the last, when I was substituting here for Dave, actually, at the last meeting. So I do remember.
I'm happy to mention it as many times as you want me to.
I've heard it twice, but I think it is so very important because we all go knocking on people's doors, chatting throughout the year, and what comes up, my council tax bill every month, what do I get out of it? So just showing that we have, a lot of residents think that they just get their bins collected and their potholes filled. It's the reality, and just showing that we do more, we're providing value. There's a list of services that we provide, and they're getting value from that money that they pay us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But of course, that brings us straight back to a discussion provoked by Shahid's questions, and particularly the first point about how much awareness there is in the wider community about what a high proportion of the council tax goes on adults and children's social care. That is the big area of spend for unitary councils like Wokingham. And there is, in fact, remarkably little awareness of how much of the spending goes on that, I think, by most of our residents. I think when you explain to them, they're usually quite horrified about the level of the national problem that there is with adults and children's social care. They do understand then, they get the picture, but understandably, most people are very fortunate that they don't have to encounter the challenges that disabled residents, disabled children encounter every day. So they don't see it, and they don't they don't realise it's there as a major spending commitment.
Can I just add, Chair? Just one other thing just to add around that. So another part of the plan, and I appreciate we've concentrated on the themes today and then the priorities sitting within that, but we have a section called How We Will Work. And included in part of that is around our financial stability and ensuring we are getting value for money, sort of as our number one point in that. And I think the other, again, whilst we talked about other strategies that are delivering on those sort of themes and those priorities, the other big strategy that's mentioned is the medium-term financial plan will also be referenced within that document, because as we have this sort of as a golden thread, obviously, with regard to this is our council plan, and then services will set out their service plans annually. It's got to be against, obviously, being able to afford, obviously, those things and what they're doing. So it will make sure it encapsulates and references those points.
Dave. Right, thank you. My first point was going to be that the priorities to me weren't empirical enough and accountable enough, and were a little bit wishy-washy, but I understand that we're going to be underpinning them with sort of much more empirical targets. So where we have neighbourhoods thriving and accessible, etc., we look at roads will be 99.9% or whatever functional at all times. We'll have 3 minutes from a bus stop, etc., etc. But that's great. I appreciate that. So that's good in terms of that scenario. I would like to know how much money we've spent on this so far in terms of value for money, just the situation in terms of man hours, etc. It would be good to find that out, just to see how much money to date we've spent on this project itself. So if you could let me know that, that would be good. The other point is, obviously, I think we've got to be careful in terms of value for money, because we've got the spectre of devolution hanging over us, and we don't want to spend an awful lot on a local plan that then is superseded by things beyond our control. And if you want to come back on that now, not to.
Delighted to, but again, just to come back to money spent and value are not necessarily the same things, and do reflect on the fact that this is the product of engagement with our community to try and deliver something people really want rather than what we think they want. So I think that is, to my mind, something you can't put a monetary value on, the time we spend trying to engage with our community to get a genuine sense of what they believe they would like their council to deliver. But if I can just come back to your second and really very important point about devolution, where that fits in. We're all familiar, I think, with the broad outline of what's happening with the devolution discussion. The government has two broad objectives. One is these mayoral strategic authorities, which I believe are their priority. I think that's what they're most concerned to deliver. The other aspect of their agenda is the restructuring of local government by the abolition of counties and districts and the creation of unitaries. Well, we are already unitaries, of course. And while the government did initially put out quite prescriptive figures on the size of population for mayoral strategic authorities and unitaries, which I have to say almost no existing unitary complied with, they have slightly rode back from that. The figures that were initially pretty prescriptive have become guidelines, and it's pretty obvious they're now wanting to prioritise economic geographies over population, precise fixation on population size. So that's a kind of rather long-winded way of saying I think the government is mainly interested in the mayoral strategic authorities. It doesn't clearly want to have counties and districts anymore, but to abolish counties and districts is going to take a good deal of time. In many cases, it's going to require involvement from the Boundary Commission as they draw up new boundaries for new unitary authorities to replace the counties and districts. I would be very surprised if there is early attempt to try and get existing unitaries to comply with their guidelines on size. I think that we are not in imminent under imminent pressure to change. So the worst thing we could do is say, because there's this on the horizon, we should stop doing things. Because that's a really big disservice to our residents. I happen to believe the council does good things to help our residents. I'm not talking about under the current political leadership or any political leadership. I'm just talking about the council as an entity. I think it is a force for good that helps make our community stronger and better. And I don't want to stop working on our aspirations and the community's aspirations because the government has some ideas about restructuring that I don't think, so far as unitary authorities are concerned, will affect us for many years to come, if at all. So I think it would be, we have to be mindful of all that, and we have to not make very big and expensive decisions on things like headquarters at the moment. That would be unwise until we know with greater clarity where we're going and what's happening. But I think we shouldn't stop work and down tools, because what's the point? Well, I don't take that view. And this is going to be relevant, dare I suggest, and we may want to revisit this discussion in relation to the next agenda item.
I agree with your point that we can't stop, but obviously it is also, I think, very important that we don't waste residents' money. But we're a public organisation, so we have to just bear that in mind. I don't know in terms of timeline. You may well be right, Stephen. I will wait for that and see what happens. It's beyond my purview to know how quickly they're going to put that through. In terms of community engagement, you said that you can't really put a price on that. I think, unfortunately, as a council and organisation, we have to be able to put a price on it because we have to set a budget at some level to decide what level of money we're going to spend on council engagement. And to be fair, so far the council engagement's 500 external, approximately. And what's the population of working in borough? 200,000.
Well, those aren't 600 individuals. They're groups and organisations.
So how many individuals have we had in terms of?
Well, I can't give you the figures for individuals because I don't know. But the point I'm trying to make is there are lots of groups representing large numbers of individuals that count as one, not as 600. So I do think we need to remember saying 600 engagement or engagements suggests 600 people. It's not 600 people. It's a hell of a lot more than that.
Well, that may be true, but it's still, I think, a very low level of engagement considering the population that we have, and I think we have to accept that. I bet if I went out knocking on doors on Saturday all day long, I wouldn't come up with many people who'd say that they've done the consultation.
I suspect you're absolutely right, and that's true of all forms of consultation. It's difficult to engage people, but I think you would agree that the outcomes are richer for the more people you can engage with. And it's not, I think, an argument not to engage, that we can't engage with enough people or as many people as we'd like to engage. It might be a good argument for saying we need to try and find better ways of engaging.
I'm saying we should potentially try and engage more effectively and work out ways to engage more effectively.
And that's a piece of work we're actually, dare I say, engaged in. We are developing
a new up the level of response to.
Well, that's what we're hoping.
Meaningful number.
That's what we're hoping. We're actually developing a new consultation strategy that is designed to address the very points you're raising, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
Could I say that I've just been having a look at the it's launched an Engage platform, and the document that we are sharing, the full one and the easy read one. It was perhaps would have been good if we'd actually had that, the 9 pages, because there's so much narrative in it that it gives us a lot, it helps us understand how you got there. You know, there are things mentioned about adult social care, and there is an easy read version, which under the what we want to do 4 points, the first one actually is improve local roads and buildings. I'm slightly surprised you didn't mention that you had specified it in that. And you know, it is. Yeah, I would encourage everybody to go home and read it. And it's unfortunate we didn't have that. I think because it was very illuminating, and there's so much that helps you understand how you drew it out. And it is very well put out in that full document. But the easy read does bring it right down to what we want to do is improve local roads and buildings, support local businesses, protect nature and green spaces, create a community where everyone can be happy, which the easy read is really very condensed. I'm not quite sure what the target audience was. I'm not sure if people who just go, oh, I don't want to read more, won't grasp enough to be able to give a properly considered response to the engagement.
I think, well, I'm sure that Louise and Emily might want to add something, but I think it's important to say the easy read version was a result of engagement with CLASP, and CLASP have helped us devise this easy read version, and it reflects what CLASP members feel is a good way of communicating what the essence of this document is. So, you know, we believe that's very valuable, and I don't in any way apologise for anything you might find less than perfect in that. I think it is a result of working with our partners in the community, and I think they've helped us a lot in develop something that will be more accessible to more people.
No, I think just reading that summary of 4 points, the whole thing just surprised me that it didn't seem to be the key essence of the 4 themes and the priorities within it.
Just to add, so again, it's a draft. It's the first draft that we've done on the with regard to this council plan, but it's the same mechanism that we've used in lots of other strategies, where we've sort of taken, as I say, I think through social care futures and CLASP, etc. So it's through that sort of approach. So I think, again, really useful feedback. We will obviously look at it. We can share all the links with you, if that would make it easier, just to make sure you have the links into all of those different versions. As I say, I suppose we were trying to concentrate on the wording, and as I say, it wasn't meant in the fact of not sharing that with you. It was just the fact that we sort of wanted to just make sure that we looked at the themes and the priorities that were sitting within it to really have that discussion. But we'll make sure we share that. And again, for the future, we'll remember. And also when we do come back with sort of the next version before we go for hopefully for final sign off in July, you will see that version, that all of those versions will be available, and they will be part of the sort of package that we will bring in as the final package.
Yeah, I mean, please do take away that I did praise the full version. I really liked it.
Okay, yeah, great. I like that.
What's been done, what we're going to be doing, and I thought it was, what's it? 9 pages. It was very good, very good.
Thank you, and I again appreciate that feedback as well. So thank you.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions before we go on to the next item. Andrew and then Shahid.
It's more of a brief comment, really. I think what's been interesting about this is the community engagement side of thing. I think has been really positive, but I think also the flip side of that has been the discussion that actually, with 2/3 of the council fund, being spent on things that actually are things that the community don't always have a huge amount of visibility. I think there's 2 sides of this thinking. I think there's a huge amount of positivity in engaging based on what the community want, but I think important in the vision, the plan is not to ignore the fact that, without sounding, the council knows best with things, there are going to be some areas where I think it does need to take a lead, saying actually this happened, but it's so much behind the scenes that it's not going to come out in surveys and engagement and things like that. And I think that has to a certain extent been done, but I think it's not going too far either way, because I think if we just make it all community feedback, then it could ignore the things which are behind the scenes but are vitally important. So just a comment really on that.
And that's a good and helpful comment, and it's a reminder of the need to balance those things out as best we can.
I think I just want to acknowledge the amount of work which has gone on. So it's incredible. So thank you for doing that. But I think I was just working out quick figures, right, in terms of the level of engagement, going back to the point which David made, and I'm sure it's difficult to get engagement. I know that because when we were in a Conservative, we actually did an engagement across, and it wasn't easy, and it's not high percentage. We recognize that, but just as a percentage, 600 people out of that population is 0.3%. Let me finish, please. I know, don't look at that. I know, as Stephen mentioned, that when we talk about, we consulted organizations, they are not one person maybe, but actually they represent maybe hundreds and thousands of people as well. So recognize that. But even with considering that into this equation, still, I would say not more than 1% of the population has been consulted. So I'm not, it's not a critical point. It's just an observation that, the amount of people we have consulted, including the ones who are organizations as well, it is a very small percentage. So maybe we need to think of other ways of engaging our communities, and some of the points which already made before as well. Some other thinking, look, how can we, which community hasn't been engaged? Perhaps the representation was less. How can we get more out, go to them to make sure we got a holistic understanding of our communities?
Yeah, you're absolutely right that, and it picks up on the point Dave has made, that we do need to try and find better ways of more successfully engaging with the full cross-section of our community. And that is something we aspire to do. That's why we're developing a new consultation strategy that we hope will help us to capture a broad range of views of the different groups within our community better. But it is also, I think, just important to add, I mean, I'm glad you kind of moved away from the 600 people, just to recognise that I did say that there are quite a lot of organisations in here. So you acknowledge that. Thank you for that. But it's also important to say that going back to the community vision, which is an integral part of the way this is presented, that community vision itself was also the product of widespread engagement. And there we did seek to engage with groups that normally are not good at engaging with us, younger people in particular. And we tried on all sorts of interesting ways, using the volunteers who worked on the community vision. Those community partners who worked on it offered up their time for free, so we didn't have to spend money on this form of engagement. So, for instance, recognising that getting to younger people, and that's quite broad category, actually having questionnaires and people talking to people in our leisure centres was a good way of approaching this, rather than expecting people to just fill in an online survey. And we did a lot of that. And that was mainly done, as I say, by volunteers on the steering group or connected with the steering group for the community vision. So we got a lot of unpaid labour helping us to do this engagement. And a lot of these groups use their own connections and networks to get the message out. So yes, you're absolutely right. We always need to strive to make our consultations more representative and more meaningful. But I think we are doing quite a lot of work, and have done a lot of work, both within this document to get this document to you now, but also in that foundational work on the community vision. And it has been revelatory to me about how partnership working engenders new opportunities that you'd never known it existed before you started on the work of partnership. So, we've got lots of things, good collateral benefits that have flowed from that, access to groups we've never had access to before, and we want to build on that.
Just last comment from me, and I'll Chair, if you may. I think engagement, when you talk about, I think I see as a two-way thing as well. Yes, we are listening to the communities, what their priorities are, but also highlighting what council is working on, urgent things, because that does have it will actually, then this way their expectation will be more realistic. Because the point that Andrew made as well, if 2/3 of our budget is going towards adult social care, then all the priorities which are going to come up, they can only be fitted within the 1/3 of the budget, right? Deliverable. So it needs to be, I'm sure it is, in terms of two-way, educating the public, as Stephen said, they're probably not aware, but also, then this way, they probably their what their desires and wishes will be more of a realistic in a way, knowing that 2/3 is actually a spend on that, which is limited sort of scope in terms of lowering it, but then whatever comes up then only can be fitted with the remaining what we have.
You're absolutely right. And engagement does necessarily need, I think, to be a two-way process. Explaining, the limitations and what's achievable, as well as asking for people's aspirations and hopes. And we, I think, have done that. We've done that very realistically in all of our engagements. We've tried to set clear expectations. I think most people are fully aware that the council is not awash with money, that we are very lowly funded by central government, and we are heavily reliant on the council tax and any other form of generating income locally. So I think there is an increasing awareness of all these limitations and what's achievable. And engagement does give you the opportunity to convey this message as well as listen. You can also provide some educative function, I think, through engagement. And I think we have tried to do that and will continue to try.
Can I just quickly add, just to add to what the leaders said, just with regard to obviously the information we've shared today on engagement, I think what we're going to do is we will look at how we share that story because again, it has been sort of we have been on a journey with obviously what we've been doing. Probably what we haven't referenced and made reference to is that we are not ignoring the community vision feedback. We've been using that, and perhaps what we haven't said is that's sort of the 600 is over and above what some of the stuff we've already received. So I think what we need to do is we just need to look at how we describe that journey in our report when we sort of bring that. So again, we can demonstrate a little bit clearer perhaps what we've done. As I say, we've gone quite high level with the slide there, and perhaps we just need to think about the message that we're giving, because as I say, it's perhaps not got across the intent of the sort of numbers of things that we've been looking at.
And just very quickly, I do think that we need to be careful that when we say we've contacted organisations and therefore we've covered a much larger group. Otherwise, we could be in a position where we say, well, the council's 54 people. That means that covers everybody. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't. Everyone has different views, and I think you only get to the views by drilling into the actual individual person. Organisations will represent, but they won't know exactly what their priorities are. Just as I wouldn't know necessarily what George's priorities are.
Marie-Louise.
Sorry, I think we're reaching the end now of the things. I do think there is a strong opportunity for kind of mutual learning in the engagement, and that could be maybe something that could be brought out a bit more in how we present this or how this is talked about, because it's quite horrifying to see the sort of the disconnect between the priorities that are kind of the raw priorities. And I completely believe you. If you talk to people on the street, they will say, this is what we want. Yeah, this is what you should be doing. But at the same time, it requires from us part of that mutuality, and us as an institution and as political groups within it, like an honesty and openness about what can be achieved. Yeah, because we can all go out promising potholes and, you know, all sorts of things to be done and improved, but we work within a structure where, let's be honest, the capacity of municipalities has been under attack for, you know, 15 years. Yeah, perhaps terminally, we don't know. I mean, but the changes, because 15 years ago, these would have been reasonable aspirations for a council. 20 years ago, maybe. Yeah. Now, in the structure that we have, it's very different. And I think we need to be, all of us, as both individuals and as an entity, aware of that. And at the same time, as our capacity diminishes, we have to be careful about raising our aspirations, because that's where you get this or raising our aspirations unrealistically, because that's where you get this kind of collapse of trust in institutions. Because, you know, we're saying, you know, it could be said that we are claiming that we're going to make everybody thrive. I know we're not, but we're claiming this as our purpose. But in fact, we are essentially, you know, a social care grant making agency with a pothole contract. Yeah, so the realistic state of where we are has to be factored into this as well. And one of the ways that you could bring this in maybe is to, again, always a fan of stories, of narratives, of sort of talking about what we are going to do differently as a result of this plan, and more crucially and more difficult, perhaps more difficult, is there anything we're not going to do, or we're going to stop doing because of this process? Because one of the things I, as a sort of grant manager, looked at this and I thought, well, I could pretty much justify any activity under this. I could find somewhere that it would fit, because, and that's what happens when you have these very top level things. So I think one of the ways to present it or to talk it through with people is to look at, what are we not going to do as a result of what have we decided that we're not going to do?
Maybe I should respond to that. If I could take your points in the order, you've made them insofar as I can remember it precisely. Time is moving on, and I feel I'm going to work for my supper on the next item as well, and possibly the one after that. But trying to recall your sequence of points, Mary-Louise. I mean, the first one about it's a mutually learning process. I think that's absolutely right. And right at the beginning of the process, if we take the community vision as the foundation of this and see it as part of the same process, right at the beginning of that community vision process, I do remember warning everybody that this community working in partnership is challenging and difficult, and one of the major difficulties is setting realistic expectations about what can be achieved, and that the council would not be able to do everything people wanted, that it wouldn't have enough financial resource to do everything that people would want. And we had to recognise that, and we had to try and engage with people to make it clear what the council's financial position was and what its financial resilience was. So I think we've tried to do that at every turn where it's possible to do it. But obviously people don't always hear what you say, and it's sometimes they don't pick up the caveats, let's put it that way. So I do accept all of that, but and I think I'm kind of going to have to move on, sadly, to an area where I don't think we're ever going to be in entire agreement. You talked about councils having big financial challenges over the last 20 years, and that's indisputably true. Well, I suppose there are many different ways of trying to address that challenge. We obviously try to maximise the effectiveness of everything we do as an organisation. We try to improve our efficiency and make sure that we're providing value for money. But partnership working, which I know you have some doubts about, but partnership working is a direct response to the financial challenges we face. And that Empower survey, which I know George doesn't like me keeping talking about it, but I'm afraid I'm going to keep talking about it at every opportunity because it is quite good for the council. I know you just don't want me just to keep going on about it. I understand that. Yeah, no, I will say it again and again and again, because it's something we can be proud of, to be ranked number 5 in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, in terms of efficiency of our spend. But that wouldn't be possible without working in partnership. There's no question in my mind about that. If you work in partnership and you're measuring pounds spent per outcomes achieved, then very clearly, if you can lever in other pounds from outside the organisation to help achieve objectives, that is a very good outcome for our residents. And it is ultimately about trying in a pragmatic way to produce the best results for our residents. But I do understand your concerns, and I do understand the need to set expectations at as realistic a level as we can. And I think we've been trying to do that, but no doubt there is more we could do and will have to do.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to the consultation, encouraging people to engage with that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the delivery plan when you come back with it. And well, I think you've got your work cut out with the KPIs. I mean, some of them are going to be quite tough.
I can help you with those.
I hope. Well, I mean, I
think you'll make them very much tougher.
In my sort of technical writer nitpicky, when I was looking through it, I did notice a few. You know, some are measurable, and some are just not measurable at the moment. So you do need to pay attention to that and find some ways in which you can measure them. But otherwise, I think it's absolutely brilliant piece of work.
I was just going to say thank you, Chair.
Good start.
And thank you, councillors. I appreciate the input today. It's all really useful. Everything is always noted with regard to the feedback we receive from you. And as I say, hopefully, again, we'll be back to share the next stage of the journey and what we've received, having taken on board the points you have raised. And equally, with regard to KPIs, delivery plans, again, we will be coming to share that information with you as well.
Can I just make sure that my request for the costs to date is minuted, including labour costs? Thank you.
And should thank the officers and Stephen for coming and telling us all about it. Thank you very much. On to Stephen's next job, agenda item 63. Berkshire Prosperity Board. Over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, well, I'm very, very glad we've got Karen here on screen, who will be able to take you through in more detail what's been going on with the Prosperity Board. And it's really good to see Karen here, and I'm very pleased that she is contributing so effectively to what we're doing in terms of high-level strategy and economic strategy in particular. You will have seen the town centre strategies and the Berkshire economic strategy recently, I think, brought to this committee, or was it community and corporate? I'm kind of losing the will to remember. It was community and corporate, so I'm afraid you won't have seen it, but it went to community and corporate, and those of you who are on community and corporate will have seen it there. And that was owed a lot to Karen and her input. So I'm immensely grateful for that. The Berkshire Prosperity Board was established in July of 24, I think, if I remember correctly. And it's the product of the Berkshire leaders working together, I think, quite effectively over the last 18 months, 2 years. And the Prosperity Board was set up with the 6 unitary authorities in Berkshire, all contributing to it in different ways, all taking the lead on particular work streams and all sharing out the servicing arrangements. So the accountable body is Wokingham, the comms side of it's dealt with by Reading, the administrative support is provided by Bracknell, but each of the work streams is headed by a different political leader, but also the contribution comes in terms of the officer input from a different council. So it is a truly integrated effort. And the Berkshire Prosperity Board, the aim is to put us in a position to both exert more influence in the corridors of power, but also to secure more external funding for cross-border infrastructure projects in particular. We've established a Berkshire Business Board, which is effectively a group of local businesses which advises the Prosperity Board on business affairs and business matters. So we've established the foundations really, and just to anticipate Dave's returning to the issue about how all this fits in with Devo, broadly the same answer applies as to the one I gave you earlier, Dave, that we will be continuing the work with the Prosperity Board. We had a preliminary meeting on Friday with other councils to discuss possibilities for a mayoral strategic authority. But coming out of that, we had a Berkshire leaders meeting on Monday just to reflect on the outcomes of that initial meeting. And the universal view was we must press ahead with all the work we're doing with the Prosperity Board. We must not let that, we mustn't be distracted from that. Because again, you know, the timetable for changes, if changes occur, is not clear. So we will not be slackening in our efforts on the Berkshire Prosperity Board, which we all think can make an important contribution that will help all of the councils in Berkshire. I don't think I need to say anything more. I probably said too much already, but Karen will, I'm sure, take us through the slides.
Thank you for that, and that was an excellent introduction. I'll pick out the additional points in the slides if I can, just to add to that. So as Stephen said, it was over a couple of years ago when the initial discussions started, and was really reflecting the challenges and the opportunities faced by the Berkshire economy. So although I think the recognition that we've got a comparatively strong economy, nevertheless, there's quite a lot of challenges being experienced, particularly experiencing the decline in productivity and a range of other challenges at the time. And as sort of indicated over the time, there's been changing government policy, and that continues to change. So the leaders agreed and recognised all of those issues, that by working in partnership, then actually there'll be greater benefit and greater scale of opportunity and influence by working together. So the Prosperity Board was established, as you said, in last year. Over the meantime, a particular key requirement was to develop the Berkshire economic strategy, and that was done over the course of the last year and approved at the Prosperity Board just prior to Christmas. And as Stephen said, also the establishment of the Business Board, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. So again, I mean, without sort of focusing on this too much, because we've already covered quite a bit of this, it's actually established as a joint committee, so has a formalised structure, a formalised governance model, with the leaders of the 6 local authorities in Berkshire meeting quarterly, and the 6 work streams, which is where the focus of the work is at the moment. Again, I'll just give a little bit more detail in a moment. Business Board has been established and has met for the first meeting again just before Christmas. Just again, so you can visually see how it all works together. So the joint board with the 6 authorities, supported through the Chief Execs Forum, Leaders Group, and then the work streams below that. And then we have the business board. We are the accountable body, so loads of money comes through us, and as a secretariat that's supported through that. What's the Prosperity Board delivering? Well, I think the thinking at the time was that there was a real opportunity for that shared vision, and creating that sort of strong, inclusive, sustainable economic focus, but recognising that by the collaboration working together, the partnership working would create that strengthened case to government. It would create a much more collective, stronger voice, lobbying government and other agencies, and it would give a focus through these work streams. Also, and I think what's become clearer, certainly over the last few months, is this real opportunity for cross Berkshire working and bringing together a number of things. So again, recently at the December board, the local visitor economy partnership, the LVEP, and you may have heard of this. It's an acronym that sort of has got some traction now, and a number of different areas have got LVEPs now, including Berkshire Nows was approved just recently, and that gives that real opportunity to think about, support, grow the visitor economy and attract new funding, and very much sort of how both all the authorities, but working with public and private sector organisations, can really support the visitor economy. Connect to Work is a very live programme currently. It's a new DWP programme which thinks about supporting our residents, particularly where there's health inequalities, and how we support them into work and retain them in work. So quite an intensive programme. Again, it's working across Berkshire's. DWP have said that they're working in clusters and they regard Berkshire as a cluster. So very much perhaps in the past it would have been programmes that would have come to us as individual authorities. This new programme is very much Berkshire focused. So that's challenging us and working how we'll work that through and how we'll commission and deliver that. But again, I think under the auspices of the Prosperity Board, that basis of collaborative working now puts us into a much stronger position. And similarly, and perhaps been around a little bit longer, but the Digital Infrastructure Group, the DIG Berkshire, that also is another example of joined up approach, in this case tackling infrastructure, particularly around digital. So just then moving on to the business board, so something that's been a while in development, but had its first meeting just before Christmas. So really just about that engagement with key local businesses in helping shape the economy in Berkshire, and giving that strong business voice. So drawn from some of our key sectors. So we've got representation of life sciences, creative screen industries, looking to get IT and digital, and visitor economy and so forth. So already we've got Bayer, Syngenta, Blake Morgan and Shinfield Studios, and other major companies are just in the final stages of recruitment. As I said, they came together for the first time just before Christmas, and really just starting to sort of form how they'll have that role in and really helping to shape the economy, helping to think through some of those issues and some of the larger issues, and making sure that we've got that business voice embedded in our thinking. The other key deliverable that the Prosperity Board has overseen over this last year or so is the Berkshire Economic Strategy, and as I said, that was approved just prior to Christmas. Its vision, so ambitious, by 2035 Berkshire will have the most productive and fastest growing local economy in the UK. So thinking about the business base and making sure that there's superior growth, thinking about the resilience, thinking about the international connectivity, very much thinking about the jobs and the types of jobs, and making sure we've got a skilled and productive workforce behind them, and making sure we've got that 21st century infrastructure. The action plan for this is just in development at the moment. Just a little bit more flavour, and those of you that have seen our own Wokingham Borough economic strategy will recognise some of the themes we tried to make sure there was a strong alignment between the two. So one was supportive of the other as work develops, but very much so the four main areas of focus. So economic productivity, as I've said, Berkshire has a challenge in its declining productivity, so a real focus on trying to reverse that, thinking about supporting our businesses through innovation, internationalisation, and looking at the clustering and the types of clusters of businesses that we want, recognising that businesses need to improve performance, so thinking about entrepreneurialism, the knowledge economy, getting that shared economy between, and particularly thinking around the what's called an innovation ecosystem, so the relationship between industry, academia and the public sector, and how that can help support our local business growth. Strong focus on people and work and our skills, and then the fourth area around our environment and making sure we've got the enabling infrastructure to support growth. Mentioned a little bit the work streams, and there are 6 work streams under the Prosperity Board, and these are ones that are, again, bringing together representation from all of the local authorities. And as Stephen said, there's both an operational lead and a strategic lead, and a mix of those across the 6 work streams. So just to give you an example of the sort of work they're involved in. So the first one actually is now called the Employment and Skills. Things have evolved just a little bit over the last month or two, but very much focusing. So starting to think about the skills and the workforce planning, but at the moment, as the group's coming together with this big Connect to Work programme, that's given a real focus to think through, how to actually get that Berkshire approach to supporting people into work. And particularly this, actually there was a meeting earlier on this afternoon, really starting to think through how do we get that business engagement and really understanding and working with our local businesses around how they can help on the support to employment and helping people and retaining people perhaps who have disabilities or various other health challenges that they may have, and keeping and attracting them into work and retaining them in work. We've got housing and a focus on bringing our various housing chief officers together and supporting the housing agendas. Health and equality is starting to very much to tie in, and that's where we're starting to see some links across the work streams, which again is very positive, I think, showing that partnership and collaboration. But the health and inequalities work stream starting to think through and map through, look at the evidence base around people who are either unemployed or who have health inequalities and how we support them into work. So you can start to see the relationships between some of the work streams. So I won't go through them all. Obviously happy to take any questions, but just sort of through the 6 that we've got, the strategic infrastructure, net zero and sector development also starting to find their feet in terms of developing the work, the evidence base, the priorities that they need to, or we want to work on over the next 6-12 months. And as I said, starting to see the elements of cross collaboration across the work streams as well. So I'll finish there. Obviously happy to take any questions. I don't know, Rhiann, you've been working on this quite a lot longer than I have, but whether you've got any final comments or summary comments you want to make.
No, that was really good. Thank you. I think it's fair to say that since we set up the joint committee that was active from last April, it's been very much an initiation phase the last year about getting all of the meetings set up and the partnerships in place. So feeling as if next year is really going to be more about delivery and delivering some of those work streams that we were talking about. It is really evident that the way the government is talking to us is that they were looking at a functional economic area. So we talked about the funding coming for Connect to Work as all of Berkshire, so as having to work together, but also Department of Business and Trade and Inward Investment is wanting to talk to Berkshire as an area rather than individual local authorities. I think it's just worth adding that Wokingham's had a really strong role in developing and setting up the Prosperity Board, and that Stephen is currently the chair of the 6 local authorities, and Susan Parsonage and George have really led the work of the directors, chief execs in pulling it all together. But I think open the floor really to questions now.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Oh, Stephen.
Just a very, very, very small point, just to thank Rhiann. I wasn't sure, Rhiann, was there, and I should have mentioned you also in the introduction, Rianne, because you, like Karen, have done a lot of work on this, and thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. Wokingham has played a key role in getting this going, so we can be very proud of that, I think.
Shahid.
Just on that, Stephen, I think I just want to recognise that this is a very good initiative. Because obviously working as all local authorities, which you have much more clout in terms of, as a lobbying, because as individual unitary, we have a limited amount, right? So I think that's a very good initiative. My particular things I want to pick up is on about people, work and skills. Yes, productivity is down. One of the reasons is because we don't have enough skill in the area. All right, and especially in Thames Valley, and as we know, there's a lot of technology companies are based in this area. I think we're quite sort of privileged in a way. We are some of the best companies around the world, not only in the UK. Their head offices are based here. But being my background in that area for the last 30 years as well, and talking to a lot of senior people within different industries, skill is the biggest issue. Now, I always hear it's mentioned regarding the apprenticeship programs. That is a long-term plan. I think what I don't see here, it would be useful when you take this forward to have a short-term and a long-term plan. I see the apprenticeship generally is about 3 to 6 years program in terms of, generally. Yes, you can have a shorter ones as well, but really the future jobs which are coming up, they require a high level of skills. So for that, it's not 12 months, it probably is going to be 3 to 6 years. Now, 3 to 6 years, because of the changes which are rapidly happening, is too long, right? So if we're going to totally rely on apprenticeship, yes, it's a long term, but it's not going to solve the immediate problem. Just give you an example, there's a parliamentary report done in 2023 where they realized that we have got more than nearly 250,000 skills required in the data space, AI and cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Now, this was in 2023, right? So now the problem is much worse now. And if you have a plan which is 3 to 6 years, that is going to go even much worse. So what the industry is fighting for is they want people right now. So there needs to be a very short-term, intensive programs where the skills can be developed, and as a result, actually they can be utilized. So that's, I think, just a comment and observation that this is something that needs to be embedded in short-term and long-term. And what the companies are doing is they are getting people from outside the UK because the skill is outside. And as a result of that, our youngsters and people living in Wokingham and all the Thames Valley, they're being left out because they don't have the skills. They're highly paid jobs, but people are coming outside and companies can get them because they have the clout to do that. So I feel that if you want to improve the well-being and financial well-being of our local people, we need to invest on those people. So they're upskilled, opportunities are there. They can't make the most of those opportunities because they don't have the skills. So I think we need to have just making sure that when we develop this and move forward, and even through yourself as a chair, making sure that we have a short-term plan where we can upskill our people so they can actually make the most of the opportunities. Opportunities are definitely there, but they can't make the most of them because they don't have the skills. I hope that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, and thank you very much, Shahid. And I'm glad you are supportive of the establishment of the board. Just as a small aside, it is in itself an example of a kind of partnership working, because we're obviously working in partnership with other councils, and that has been productive in lots of ways. But I think we haven't yet begun to see the full fruits of that particular partnership. I think Karen might want to say something on your specific points Maybe she doesn't want to say something on those specific points. I don't know. But while she's thinking about how she would respond, I think it is worth saying that we do try and engage with some of our business partners on the business board on these very issues that you're talking about. We're very acutely aware that these are issues of importance to local businesses. Many do want to think long term as well as short, and so we've had some quite productive discussions with Shinfield Studios about securing a long-term pipeline of labour supply, from encouraging them to engage with local schools, so that young people can recognise what opportunities there are at places like Shinfield Studios and start setting their career objectives and trajectories, educational trajectories, in a way that will help them achieve those objectives. So I think we're very mindful of the points you're making, but I don't know whether Karen has anything she wants to add.
Maybe just a couple of points. I think it's very well made and very timely, because, as I said, the action plan for the Berkshire economic strategy is starting to surface. So I think that's really timely to focus on short and long-term actions. I think that's absolutely right. I know we're talking about the Berkshire economic strategy, but I thought I might just do a little bit of a plug from a Wokingham perspective, because a Woking Borough perspective, because we are just starting to embark on developing our own skills and employment strategy as a subset, if you like, of the broader economic strategy that we approved just recently at the executive. And again, I think those points are well made, and I'll make sure as we're bringing that piece of work forwards, and I'm sure it'll come to oversight and scrutiny at some point a little later on in the year, but we'll definitely pick up those points. And I think just the final comment I'd make, just as it's just been raised around the work with Shinfield Studios, we're just starting to embark, particularly with the University of Reading, as part of our strategic partnership with them, around looking at a film and high-end TV skills hub, which very much does what it's saying to do, and is particularly will be looking to support the gaps that there are in that industry, for example, bringing forward and connecting and making sure we've got the skills, the upskilling of local people to fill those jobs. So I think the strategic partnership we've got with the university, we're just using that as example between film and high-end TV, but I hope that we might look at then other sectors and just start thinking through how we can work with that. And that, although it's us as a council working with the university, I think it very much will get positioned, hopefully, if we get everything lined up, as having wider regional impact. So we can start sort of initiatives at a smaller scale, perhaps within the borough, but also play very much on that regional platform as well, and bring the two together. So hopefully get bigger impact as well. So.
Can I just come back on that one? That's good. Thank you for that. But just want to sort of the point I was making, just maybe from a different angle, is that I represent Bulmesh and Coronation, and we have Thames Valley next to, but a lot of people living, which is walking distance from there, but youngsters or even people living in that, they don't have the skills to actually work in those places. So sometime working with partnership, which is absolutely the right thing to do, but also recognizing there are people, how can we actually upskill them so they can actually make the most of those opportunities which are there? Going out and reaching to those people, because they're not going to go to university, or university is not going to go to them, right? But as a council, how can we engage with those people and say, look, only way we can get you out of the poverty trap is basically to upskill you. And that is the only way to do it. Council cannot feed you for the long term, right? Or cannot support you. Sorry, maybe not feed you, but support you in the long term. But one thing we can do is we can upskill you and maybe use our partners and other to facilitate that, to make sure you can stand on your own feet. So that's the thing.
Yeah,
You know,
Thanks,
I was just going to say, I think that that's such a good point, and it works into a project that we're looking at the moment in terms of prevention. And I think that, you know, some of what you're talking about will be addressed through the prevention work stream that we're looking at, where we will be working with people to help them get better jobs and to help them get those good quality local jobs that you're talking about, but at the same time support our businesses to get the skills that they actually need as well.
Marie-Louise.
Thank you. Just a quick sort of question about the involvement of trade unions in this, because as I recall from the local enterprise partnerships and the, you know, late lamented EU structural fund partnerships, many of the evaluations said that the involvement of trade unions is particularly involved in skill identification and skill training was absolutely key to the success of the partnerships of the LEPs. You know, where they did work, they tended to have more vibrant involvement of trade union partners. So I just wondered if you had engaged with local trade unions or if you had any plans to bring that level, that expertise into your thinking and acting.
Well, I don't think we have as yet, but I think that's a really good suggestion, because we need to bring as many partners as possible and get them involved. So I think that is a suggestion that we'll make. I don't know, Karen, if you wanted to add anything further to that.
Yes, I agree. I think from a Berkshire perspective, that would be a good suggestion. Just again to reassure you, this is not supposed to be a session on our own, the skill strategy that will say, well, the work's starting on that, but we've definitely got the trade union, for all the reasons you've just said. The trade unions are definitely part of the stakeholder group that we want to engage with, but I think it's a point well made, and we'll raise it at the Berkshire level as well. So thank you for that.
Okay, Caroline.
Thank you. This is a quick question. Do you have any sense of timescales about how long these things, because we got on strategic infrastructure, developing a plan. So is that a year, 6 months? Got any idea? Thank you.
Well, I think Karen might be able to give you more specificity on some of these things, but in essence, we've been establishing the structures and starting the work. I'm not sure we're in a position to give you a precise timetable yet, but Karen might be able to say more about this.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, I think the work streams are finding their feet. Some are starting to get their teeth into things. I gave you the example of the Connect to Work and the employment and skills work stream. So one of the things I'm just doing at the moment with Rianne and our program manager is just doing that real stock take of where we are, so we can get that precisely that clarity around what the priorities are. What the resources are required to actually deliver the priorities, and what I think would be both the short term, and a lot of it still is actually data and evidence gathering and getting that clarity at the Berkshire level. But what are then the key priorities that need to flow from that, and the sort of timelines and resources? So work in progress, and I think perhaps if we were to come back at one of these meetings perhaps later on in the year, we could give a more precision around exactly the sort of things that those work streams are doing, the priorities that they're focusing on, timelines and so forth. So happy to do that if that's appropriate a bit later on in the year.
Thank you. It's just, I think it's a really good idea, and I'd like to see. Yeah, I just.
Well, thank you, Caroline, and thank you very much, Karen, for that answer. I think George has reminded me the March Prosperity Board will be getting an update on progress on the work streams, so we probably will be in a better position to give you a fuller answer after that.
Dave?
Yeah, a couple of things. Firstly, I think that while it's really important that we have strong stakeholder engagement, I think we just have to be slightly cautious. And I am in favour of the programme, but I think too much collaboration can mean an absence of dynamism and leadership. We need, to get things done quickly. Sometimes the economy is moving very quickly, and I think that to achieve that, You've just got to be careful that you don't over collaborate. I think it needs to be a clear focused direction and looking to achieve what we need to achieve to help everybody. So that's the first point. Second point, in terms of the economy itself, I think it's very important to think about entrepreneurship and driving entrepreneurship. I think there's never been more opportunities to build prosperity, build business and make a success. I work a lot with small and medium-sized businesses. I've seen some go from very small to pretty big. And I think that one of the core things that I would certainly look to do is look to encourage entrepreneurship, business ideas, and then those young people may not have all the skills necessary to deliver on those plans, but if the board can help develop links with people that can, between them, can help build those teams and networks, that would create a very strong hub that everyone would feel drawn to here for an entrepreneurial background. So rather than maybe focusing on other aspects, I would think you don't have to be that educated or that technically skilled to come up with a really great idea. And if you've got the energy and the passion, the rest we can all help with and help you build a success that's going to help everyone around us in this economy.
Thank you for those points. Obviously, one of the challenges in bringing together the 6 councils to form the Prosperity Board was no one wanted to see a loss of sovereign authority for their own individual councils. So that has always been our starting point, that individual councils are free to do their own thing as well, but these are the things that we will do in common. So if I can reassure you, we as a local council, like all of the other councils, still have the freedom to pursue their own path and develop their own strategies, as we are doing. We have a Wokingham economic strategy, which is very much focused on what we think is good for here. So I don't think we can be accused of over collaborating. I think we're trying to collaborate at the right level on the right things. That's the crucial thing. On your other point about entrepreneurship, yes, I'm sure you're right. Entrepreneurs are born, not made. But we can provide conditions that nurture and make that possible, or we can provide conditions that make it much more difficult. And obviously, we will be striving to do the former.
Jade.
Just a comment, actually, I think just on the 2 points. I suppose the outcome of the partnership has to be win-win for everyone. That's what we want, isn't it? So yes, collaborate, but it has to be win. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants, all the councils, all the residents throughout Thames Valley, they need to be better off. That is the outcome which all councils want. But in terms of entrepreneurship, one thing I think which is really good, we can learn from the Silicon Valley in the US as well. They have got an entrepreneurship ecosystem built, which is very good. And there's a support structure where if a new idea comes up, then the system is built, they will actually help nourish and support and even fund it as well. And then something small happens and goes to big. And this is the problem we have in the UK, that we don't have that ecosystem which is well built and well structured. You might have a brilliant idea, but you can't take it to the next level unless you go to US or unless you go to the other places. But if moving this forward, and Thames Valley, which I see is the second biggest, I think GDP, in terms of GDP, I understand is 15% of the UK GDP, which is after London, which is 25%. That's my understanding. But if we can actually develop that ecosystem, where if the idea comes up and we have that ecosystem built, we can support that, that will be hugely beneficial. Then they don't need to go to outside, but they have got the whole support structure here, and they can take it to an idea to the next level. I think that could be if that can happen, I think that itself a single benefit, which will be hugely, something which is good comes out of this board.
You made two good points. One more general point about partnership, that for it to work, everyone has to feel they're getting something out of it, as well as putting something into it. That's absolutely right. And of course, that's the basis of successful collaborations. And Karen referred to the strategic partnership we have with the University of Reading, which is also providing us with lots of benefits. And that's a perfect example of each side getting something out of this, and therefore having a commitment to it working. The university gets the advantage that they get research funding connected with their ratings in an exercise carried out by the government called the Research Excellence Framework. And that includes an important multiplier effect for what's called impact. So the impact of research carried out at institutions like the University of Reading on the wider community. And as you can probably imagine, the gold standard of impact is influence on public policy. So the university is able to demonstrate that it's influencing the public policy in the sense that it's influencing the way we develop our own policies in Wokingham. And that helps them lever in external funding. And for us, we clearly are getting at either no cost or low cost the fruits of really the latest important research on things like climate emergency, and we're getting access to the expertise in the Henley Business School. So we are benefiting from that relationship. Both sides are benefiting in the way that you were describing. Your other point about how you provide the support networks and infrastructure, if you like, to ensure good ideas can get progressed and turned into reality and profitable reality. That's obviously something we're very mindful of. And one of the objectives of the Prosperity Board is to lever in more external funding, whether that's public or private, so that we can build up that kind of ecosystem where there is the finance available to enable these things to happen. Because often what the problem is access to finance to turn the idea into something that is effectively a real business opportunity. And it's that access to finance that's important. So the more we can lever in to build up the financial resource available within the area, the better. And just a final point, if I may, you're quite right. You said, Shahid, what a powerhouse the Thames Valley is in terms of the UK economy. I have to say, Berkshire is at the beating heart of that. Berkshire itself, we shouldn't underestimate how powerful a player Berkshire is in that Thames Valley economy. I don't know whether Karen wants or Rhiannon want to add anything to that.
I think the only thing I would add, I mean, I'm a big fan of ecosystems, and I've taken quite a time looking at how ecosystems work. And you're absolutely right. The Silicon Valley is a good example, but very mature. One of the things that surprised me as I've come into post here is we've got, as you're saying, a lot of the attributes of an ecosystem. So we've sort of got quite a bit of the infrastructure, but when you look at the SMEs and the high growth SMEs, we don't have enough, and I find that surprising when I look that we've got quite a lot of the components. So I don't think my surmise at the moment is that the ecosystem isn't working as well as it could do, and I think that's where the Berkshire Prosperity Board, its work streams and that targeted collaboration comes together to understand just what we need to do. So is it the ecosystem isn't quite working, or have we got some gaps? Or it is, as I suspect, it's the engagement between our SME business, our small medium enterprises, and that kind of wider infrastructure, and that we'll need to do more to provide that sort of support. But I think the Prosperity Board just gives us exactly that opportunity for those sort of discussions and those sort of linkages to be made.
Just a common one. Just share the example which I know, right? I mean, Dubai, for example, has become that hub now. over the years, and I know 20 businesses who actually gone from here, Thames Valley, and they were set up their operations there because they say it's very difficult to do business in the UK nowadays. So many obstacles, hurdles. And there they say, look, it's so easier. The ecosystem is built so sophisticated that they can take it to the next level. You know, I'm just highlighting that things are happening in different parts of the world, and we can learn from that. And Thames Valley is a brilliant place, and Berkshire, as you said, is at the heart of it. But obviously, if we don't do it here, somebody else will, and people will go there. So I think we have a good opportunity to be that hub.
Maybe suggest the strapline, make Berkshire great again.
Do you know, actually, can I come back
It
on what
doesn't
Saeed
sound
was saying?
You can't pronounce it.
I was just wanted to say that everything that you're saying, Saeed, is we recognise all of that, and I think we've got a group of IT businesses that are working together in that sector, and they've identified everything that you're saying. So at the moment, we're losing loads of ideas and businesses and entrepreneurial small businesses to the States, where they're able to get those VCs and that the borrowing that they need, sort of, the risk-free borrowing, if you like, that they need to set up their businesses. So what you're saying, I think, is recognised. I think it's how we go about addressing it and making, because we will lose competitive advantage in Berkshire if we don't address it. And as Karen says, we're making a start with the Prosperity Board to do so.
We are losing competitive advantage. It's not we will lose it. We are already losing it.
Well, that kind of underlines the reason why the Prosperity Board's a good idea.
Okay, we haven't got any more comments. We can get on to the next item, which is item 64, council motions, progress of. And I think Steve, yes, Neil.
So this is the annual report which the committee requested a couple of years ago. So I think it's fairly straightforward. It's a list of all the council motions that have been approved, and there's a comment on progress that has been made in implementing those motions. So it's here for members' comment and questions. We've got some officers who may be able to help. If not, we'll take away questions and bring back answers in the usual way.
Okay, I was going to go through page by page. So on the table. So yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right, I want to ask about an omission. Motion 496, proposed by Councillor Rebecca Margetts on the 19th of January 2023, which was passed, and it doesn't seem to appear here.
So that one was taken out on the basis that it was closed down. There was no further progress. It was about congratulating the England Lionesses. So I think that issue has now moved on.
I'm really sorry. Yes, that motion did include our congratulations, but the principle of the motion was to encourage that the council would encourage all schools to encourage more girls to take part in football. I think many people will remember the speeches when Councillor Pauline Jorgensen revealed how much she liked to kick a football around the streets when she was younger. So it wasn't a motion of congratulations.
Happy to take that away and to provide an update.
That was before my time. I don't remember it. Yeah. Okay, so has anyone got any comments on motion 494?
Mine's more of a general point, if that's okay. It's more just I just wonder whether that some of it's presented in the sense that in the first column it's who submitted the original motion, but I know quite a few of the motions were amended by someone else, and so I just wonder for clarity whether either a second column or something could show. Because what we've got, the motion in the third column is the amended motion. And I think on both sides of things, I think the person who amended the motion would probably want recognition, but also the person who submitted the original one might not always want their name next to the amended one. I think it's just a point of clarity. Okay, I wasn't here when it last year. But
Okay.
Yeah,
I
either
guess
in 2 columns or a note.
We're
about-
all in agreement about that. I can't
Yeah.
imagine why anyone wouldn't be. Neil, can you take that as an action?
Yeah, happy to take that away as well.
Nothing on motion 494, the constitution one? 499, the one about key worker housing. 500, the transparency in dealing with requests for road crossings, etc. Alison.
I think it would be good to have some specific time frame more within this, rather than, you know, we're in the early stages and our aim is to do this, and perhaps we could have, you know, we aim to have achieved this by, I mean, you know, is this in 6 months, a year, or 5 years?
Yes, so we want to see more chronology in the progress reports generally.
Perhaps that's a lesson to all of us putting in motions, that maybe we should put time things in it.
Well, it's probably more relevant to some than others, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this, you know, it says as soon as possible, but I think we need a better understanding of that. Is that your area, George?
It is, yeah. I'm happy to pick that up. I understand the ask. It's just having a time frame that we can be held to account to, I think, essentially, isn't it? Which is fine. We can pick that up after the meeting.
I mean, I think we can appreciate that sometimes it's just hasn't been possible to achieve that. But I think in a progress report, we need to understand where we're at and where we hope to be. And then when we see this again next year, we've got more to.
Understood.
Discuss.
Totally understood.
Thank you.
It's entirely reasonable.
Okay, motion 502. Caravan's motion on the Borough of Sanctuary. I recently heard that Doubletree Moat House was housing asylum seekers again. And motion 508. Oh, this is about partnership working, isn't it? Motion 510. The ULEZ one. Assume there haven't been deterioration in air quality since then. It was very recent. Motion 511. The conclusions from the Marmot review. Motion 512. Yes, George.
Thank you. I find the progress report here quite frustrating, because I don't think this is a difficult ask, and this has come up a few times on in the other scrutiny that I sit on around this point, and tracking SIL and tracking specifically in this motion from Rebecca around 106 obligations. In my mind, there must be a spreadsheet in the council that says we've got a Section 106 agreement on a SDL. You know, obviously I've got Finchwood Park and I've got Arbfield Green in my patch. There must be a spreadsheet that says these are the items, this is the trigger, the deliverable, and some sort of action against it. You know what's going on, because obviously the big one in Arbfield Green is that none of the facilities have been built yet. We know we can put a big red next to that if we had our spreadsheet, but there are small triggers like build 250 houses, have this green space delivered. build 500 houses and have these trees planted. And when I read this, it's really frustrating. We need a growth bid. This is a spreadsheet that somebody really, if they're not doing it, they must be doing it now. We can't be signing into 106 agreements and then having no visibility on them on being done. I understand these agreements probably better than the average person from my day job, but the reality is at the moment we're just waiting for the other side to say we've done something, or in a lot of the cases, not building the houses past the triggers. So I'm not necessarily looking for any further answers tonight, but I'm sort of looking over at you, George. This is a spreadsheet. This is not like a piece of software and a team that are managing here. This is somebody taking the 106 agreement, putting it into triggers and obligations in a line-by-line spreadsheet, date and money. Is it delivered? Yes, no. What's the action to try and get it delivered? It doesn't feel much more complicated than that. And this is really, really, I'm more than frustrated. I'm quite angry to read that, actually, because I thought this was really something we were going to get some progress on. And Stephen, you must be also annoyed because you've been asked 2 or 3 times in council and you've said, get the local plan done and we'll do it. And this isn't what we were being told. So, yeah, please take that one away.
George, happy to take that one away. I think it is a bit more complicated than a spreadsheet, but I take the point. I'm sorry you're frustrated. I think we all feel this is something we should deliver. It's been asked lots of occasions. We have countless requests from residents and from members, so we're keen to do this as well. It's the very last point, I think, which is, the local plan is being submitted this month to the inspectorate. That is our absolute top priority, given issues that members are entirely aware of. Once that is in, we will start working on this and start putting in the bids that we need. I do think we do need a bit of funding to get this into a workable system, which is then usable for yourselves and for residents. But once that's in, we will look at this in earnest. And I'm sorry that there's a degree of frustration, which I do share and fully understand as well.
Just to come back, I don't think we need to. We talk about it being usable by councillors and residents. I suppose we just need someone that's keeping an eye on this, tracking it. It would be great if we had a little piece of software I could go on and click on something and have a look at it and what's the action and who's managing it. Don't think we really need that. I really do think it's you should be starting the spreadsheet. Some of these Section 106 agreements were signed a decade ago. And I sort of, in a way, don't believe that when they were signed way back then, someone didn't also have an attachment to that, which was these are all of the items and triggers. I'd be surprised if that didn't exist a decade ago, and then someone isn't able to just add another column that says what the status is. But I'm happy to continue this conversation offline. But this is really something that we've got to make progress on this year. We can't see another turkey on this one because it's over a year ago now already.
Is there any chance you can give us a firm commitment of when we're going to get this?
No, I don't think that's fair to. I wouldn't want to do that because I can't commit to that. I think what I can commit to is once the local plan is submitted for examination, that we will spend time on this in terms of what is it that we need to have to get. Maybe George's suggestion is the base level, which just achieves the aim, and then we can work on a further, more advanced and more user-friendly approach in due course. So I take the point, but I can't commit to a date at the moment. I'll work on it with the planners after the submission of the local plans.
Okay, what about motion 513? Motion 514? No, motion 515. I think we all remember this one. Motion 519. There's lots of detail there. I don't know whether you want us to decide there are some that can be ticked off, as it were. So they don't have to come back again.
We can discuss that outside the meeting and look for next year's report.
Okay. Right, motion 523 refers back to 512. Yep.
Yes, the same sort of, frustration really around the difficulty of accomplishing something which seems to most residents to be very basic. Yeah, to be able to know where in their development which bits belong to whom and who is responsible for it. And I completely understand that the local plan itself has taken, priority. But I would just urge that again, that this, when we think about the evaluating the benefits, to put in sufficient weight to the lived experience of residents, particularly our new residents, particularly people who buy into these new communities and find themselves like stuck, not knowing who is responsible for what, and the sort of the democratic deficit and the sort of sense of powerlessness that engenders in how people relate towards the council, how they relate towards the developer, how they relate towards the management agency, and so on. So I would, again, underline that this should be an absolute priority and that there must be other council, obviously any council which has been involved will have this. Is there not something that can be done, can be pressured for centrally in terms of a levy on developers to make sure that this is, developed? Because I think we can go further than, I understand that a spreadsheet is good, but I think in this we can go further, because I've heard the saying that we could have a spreadsheet for, and at the moment we have a process where you can phone up and ask, but in terms of empowering residents, we would like to go further.
Just a very small point. George will probably be able to give you a much more detailed and fuller answer. But on your general point, really, Mary-Louise, about the plight of residents living in these developments where the developer chooses to establish a management company and not pass over to the council for adoption open spaces and roads. This is a really big problem, which we are acutely aware affects people's lives in a quite profound way. It becomes more and more apparent almost every day what difficulties this creates, actually for the council as well as for residents, because there's an assumption still that, understandably, that the council will be able to solve certain things, which sadly we cannot, because we're effectively locked out of the process of being able to address the problems that these residents face. We have and we will continue to lobby at national level, which is the place where change needs to be made, because there needs to be some legislative changes that enable the kind of things that you're asking for in general terms to be addressed. But the specifics, I'll hand over to George.
think it's just to kind of recognise again the need for this. The vision is there for something which is as user friendly as it can be in terms of we call it GIS based system. So you have a plan, you can see where the land is, you can see who's responsible, whether it's adopted by the council or not. That's the overall vision. But it's similar to the other one. We just need to make sure that we put a package forward so that we can deliver this in an effective way and give you a timeline for when that can be delivered as well, recognising that it's hugely important for residents.
Thank you.
Yeah, just I don't expect to have sort of figures or answers in this. Kind of related to that, do we know how big the issue is in terms of people making either reports to the council website or making inquiries based on areas which the council doesn't have control? Things like grass cutting in the summer, which is on council land. I'm just thinking in terms of the efficiency of it. Are we currently in a system where it's incredibly inefficient because people are making these inquiries and the result is ultimately coming back saying there's nothing to do with us? Because that's quite a few of the inquiries I get in Shinfield. I mean, I know there's a lot of new development there. Is people saying, "Oh, we've tried the website, we can't do this," and not knowing. And I'm just wondering, is that a significant enough issue that sorting this out could actually save a lot of staff time as well?
I don't have the figures in front of me in terms of how many queries, but I can't question the fact that if people can self-serve, then they get the answer quicker and more efficiently than coming through on a call system. And that's the same for councils as well as residents. So ultimately, it will save us time and give residents a better service. So I think that's our key aim, isn't it? Essentially.
To add one point there's this sort of strange gap as well where, say in Finchwood Park, where we know that there are bits that are going to become adopted by the council, but they haven't been adopted yet because of the way that the triggers work in the 106. So you've got a green space that the council needs to inspect and needs to take over. The developer has already gone past the point in which they're meant to hand it over, but they haven't. So a resident says, well, why is this piece of grass so miserable and all the trees dying and stuff? They contact the council says, well, it's not ours, and they contact the developer and they say, well, we're going to be handing over to the council. And so it should be done now. And that's why I think we've really got to get on top of it, because it's not just the stuff that is done and that they should be maintaining or we should be maintaining. It's the stuff that just falls down the gap that we should have had by now. And we don't want to take it over if it's not up to spec, because of course we're just creating cost for ourselves. I want us to snag it and the right people to go and say we're not accepting it without this. But to the points that have been raised on this other motion, it's the same thing. If we're not on top of when stuff's handing over and 106 triggers, we're creating more work down the line and potentially more cost. We've got an opportunity to say to developers, you need to be delivering this now. Just got when they go past the trigger, we have a pile of work. We say, all this green space you've not done. I think it becomes harder for us to try and get it right in a year or two's time. So I keep going on about this, but I think we're early enough with some of these SDLs that we can catch up. We leave it another year, I think we're in a bigger problem.
And Joe, I think you said it, George, but there's plenty of cases where the developer has not provided that space to a suitable standard. And absolutely right, you just said it, we would not be adopting that until it's put to that standard. So we're not going to take on a space where we've got either poor quality environment or we've got dying trees. We want that to be in the right place before we then adopt it. And it may be that some of those lands are in that conversation at the moment, and we're saying we need something more from you before we are willing to adopt it. Doesn't remove the fact that there needs to be clarity on a website somewhere or on a system somewhere which gives residents an answer to their question about where that piece of land is at.
Okay, moving on to motion 524, winter fuel payments.
Both motion 24 and 27 relate to letters that Stephen sent on the council's behalf, which is great. I haven't seen a copy. Could you send us a copy of each of those letters?
I can pick them up if that's
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, what's back? Yeah, I think.
Okay, motion 527. That's, anybody? No? I think we've got to the end of them. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and answering all those questions. Right, we've got to look at the executive forward programme. So, sorry.
Since the executive forward programme on the agenda includes the meeting on the 30th, could I just simply ask if Councillor Brunel Walker, who chaired the last meeting of this committee in your absence, was going to attend that to put forward the proposals we made? Were they all accepted? Do we know?
Don't know. Do you know, Neil?
Sorry, which proposals?
They were about the future of the council headquarters.
Yes, I think Councillor Brunel Walker attended the executive on Thursday and put across the points made by the committee.
And were they all accepted?
I believe they were, yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Anything on page 57? $58. $59. $60.
Thank you very much for including the column where we note if these did come before scrutiny. I'm just a little surprised that the school admission arrangements, they didn't go to children's services. I don't know. Andrew?
Yes. Yes, it hadn't come up. I don't know I don't believe it came up in the previous year, and whether it has done it in the past. I can look into that and yeah, I can look into that report. Basically, I know the school place planning strategy is coming up, but I don't know about the admission arrangements. But
yeah, well, it's on the executive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Apologies. We have been a little bit backward. We've been looking at policies once they're passed, whereas, we're supposed to be, well, we're a critical friend. We're here to add value, and we need to do that before things go through.
I'll have a look into that. Yeah.
Okay, any more on page 61? Page 62? Page 63? Okay, the individual executive forward plan, page 65. So, 2 pages together. Oh, that's it. Okay, development of overview and scrutiny work programs.
Just a quick introduction. This is the time of year when we start to look at the work programmes for next municipal year. So the report suggests a process for doing that. In the annex, there are some initial draft items for next year. The suggestion is that the relevant scrutiny chairs meet with the relevant executive councillors and directors just to talk about potential items for next year, and all members will be invited to put forward suggestions. And we bring that all back to the next meeting on the 5th of March, and the committee then whittles it down and decides what its priorities will be. That's the suggestion. It's here for comment and questions.
So the process for that would be, I mean, unless anyone's got any thoughts now, in which case we can write them down, that would be going to the particular chairs with it. So if anybody here has got any, thinks of any suggestions after the meeting, put them forward to the chair of that committee.
In the past, we have opened that up completely and invited residents, parish councils to put forward. Are we not going to be doing that anymore?
Neil can talk about that.
So in terms of town and parish councils, I think there were two things. One, the focus on the borough parish liaison forum as the appropriate mechanism, rather than bringing lots of items here. And secondly, under the new constitution, there is an option for towns and parishes to ask questions at scrutiny meetings. So that was felt to be a more effective way for the towns and parishes to get their views across.
Yes, Alice.
I don't think we're not invite people to they're not going to be making a speech putting their view across. It's raising a concern about something that they think oversight and scrutiny is important to do. I know that, I've been on scrutiny for a decade. I know that often the large list of things that comes forward, an awful lot of them are not actually an area that is for every scrutiny, and they're often very localised and not appropriate. But inviting people to put it forward, I don't quite see the harm in that.
I think that's what was being recognised by this, that an awful lot of these very long lists of things for overview and scrutiny were not really overview and scrutiny sort of things. And that maybe a better way was, given that they can now ask questions, because so they could ask a question which would result in us scrutinising something.
Well, town and parish councillors, as we all know, many of us have always been able to come as a resident and ask a question. I mean, it's not very rare that we have any public questions.
That's not actually true. Shinfield Parish Council wanted to come and ask a question, and they were.
They are all residents, so as a resident, yeah.
Well, they weren't allowed to. Not as the parish council. Yes, they were allowed to come as an individual, but that wasn't what they wanted, and so the constitution now allows them to. I mean, they actually did make the argument that they have the rights of an individual, but that wasn't recognised in our constitution, and it is now. But I don't think that that's really the issue here. I think the issue here is that the sorts of things they were bringing that resulted in that long list were the sorts of things that he should have brought to borough and parish. What's it called? Borough and parish.
The borough parish liaison forum.
Liaison forum. Yes.
Well, I mean, if the outcome of our appeal is not what we wanted, then perhaps we didn't make it very clear when we were inviting people to put forward matters. And there always were some that came through, so I would say it was worthwhile. Yes, there were a lot that we were written back to and said that is not an area that we would look at, and it is. I don't think it costs as much to put a comms out inviting people to put things forward.
Stephen was stressing the importance of engagement earlier, I think.
What do you think then? What should we do?
Well, it's a matter for the committee to decide what it wants to do. If the committee wants us to contact town and parish councils and put out public requests, then we can do that. It's for the committee to decide.
Perhaps making it clearer what sorts of things we're expecting.
Yep, that's possible, Chair.
So that's also the mutual learning aspect of it, isn't it? Because as Alison says, when you have some of those questions and things, we learn about what, you know, the lived experience is and what the experience of some of these issues actually is on the ground, and vice versa. You know, that the people putting forward, whether it's an individual or person putting forward the question, will get to learn what it is, what can be addressed, and more dishearteningly, what happens to that, you know, once it has been addressed, where it goes, you know, within the decision, up the decision making tree. So
Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think I support the suggestion as well, because I think the more engagement is better. And I know one of the criticisms, I think, particularly I know Shinfield Parish sometimes has, and I don't know about the other town councils, is the sort of that disconnect sometimes between parish and borough. And I think the more that they can feel listened to and have engagement, I think the better, probably.
So perhaps it's a question of how we deal with that list rather than.
Yes, we can discuss how to make it more effective outside the meeting, but I think in principle, I think the committee seems pretty clear what it wants to do, so we can do that.
Thank you. Okay, so has anyone got any specific things that if you've looked at these lists that have been left out? Otherwise we can, you know, go away and think about it more and talk to other councillors. Yeah. Okay. Anybody? I'll close the meeting. So I think we've got to the end, haven't we? Right. Oh, we have not quite got to the end. Oh no, we've got this. The work programme. The action tracker. Oh, we've got the work programme as well. This year's work. Right, page 80. Now, oh, we were talking about this, weren't we, Neil? But maybe this agenda was a bit full. The people we heard from earlier, Louise and co, they want to bring the council plan back to us, and they were suggesting a May meeting, which we could also move some of these things to. Alison.
There are no meetings in April, and we all know that's because there are usually elections in May. We don't have any elections in May. I don't know why we couldn't have another meeting in April. I hope your hearts are all going to sing, but I think it would be better to examine these really important things in proper depth.
Yeah, but there's no meeting in May either. So this is, and they suggested May. I think that's because for the council plan, because that's they need that time. So April, May, it's another meeting, whether it's April or May. And the council plan people want a bit more time. I think that was the impression I got earlier.
Yes, so I think they're doing the consultation on the council plan. Then it's a question of when it's appropriate to come back here. And they suggest May, but we could ask whether April might be more suitable. We can have that conversation and let members know.
Do we not meet in late May when we, the first meeting where we elect the chairman, etc.?
The first meeting in the diary is the 26th of June at the moment. But we can discuss that outside with the chair and with the colleagues who were here earlier.
Yeah, so I think earlier we were talking about maybe moving recruitment and retention out of this March meeting to the next meeting, possibly the VCS partnership framework. Any thoughts?
What did you say?
Recruitment and retention and the VCS/partnership framework.
Can we, sorry, I'm going to say that one was specifically asked by Councillor Jorgensen, so I was sure, and she's brought up a couple of times.
What, the VCS?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So keep that in March.
Please do, yes.
Right.
Can I suggest that we discuss this outside the meeting and find out when, from the officers, when these things would best come forwards rather than making a decision here now?
Okay. Right. Anything on children's services? Climate emergency. The headings are at the bottom of the page, Neil.
Just checking that you're all awake at this late hour, Chair.
Core community and corporate. And health overview and scrutiny. Oh, good. Right. Now we get on to the action tracker. Page 85. Page 86. Page 87. And page 88. Alison's scrutinising. Okay. Nobody got anything to say? We really can go home now, can we? Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.